Welcome to Vows on Wire. Today, we're talking about Anwar's pursuit of justice and reform. We're jumping right into some really powerful comments Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim made recently. This was during the Dialogue with PM Anwar session he had at the 2025 Promotalin National Burhad Forum. And what we want to do is unpack what's really driving his push for reform based on what he shared there.
Exactly. And the core of it, the thing he kept coming back to, was his time in prison.
Yeah.
Over a decade, right? He stated very clearly that this period was the single biggest turning point in his entire life.
Which is incredible when you think about it.
It is. He didn't just say it was tough or, politically motivated. He said it was the only way he truly understood the dark side of the justice system here.
That hits hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because here's someone who spent years, decades even, talking about justice, freedom, fairness. But he's saying essentially that it was all theoretical for him until he was actually inside, locked up.
That's when he saw how the law could be twisted, how it could be used as a political weapon.
And specifically, how it impacts people differently. He really hammered home the point about dignity and how easily it's lost, especially if you don't have money or status.
And it wasn't just an abstract realization. It came down to a very specific, very human moment he experienced.
Right, that story he told. It's quite something. He's being taken to court, obviously a high-profile situation, guards everywhere, and he sees this young man also being escorted.
Yeah, and the description was vivid. The young man had a bruised eye.
And Anwar, despite, the CCTV cameras, the guards, everything, he manages to have this quick, quiet word with him.
Just for a minute or so, apparently. He wanted to know what the young man had done.
And the answer, stealing a pair of jeans.
One pair of jeans.
Unbelievable. And the young man was poor, obviously couldn't afford a lawyer, and had already been stuck in jail for months.
And that contrast must have been just glaringly obvious to Anwar at that moment, his own situation versus this young man's.
He basically said the difference wasn't the crime, it was class, it was power. Suddenly, he wasn't just a political prisoner. He was seeing the system from the absolute bottom.
And that connects directly back to his main point. All the talk about freedom, fairness, compassion. It was just talk until he felt the lack of it. He argues quite forcefully that you can only truly grasp the importance of these things through suffering, through personal experience.
And that painful lesson, that empathy learned the hard way. That's what he says fuels his reform mandate now.
It absolutely is. That experience fundamentally shifted his perspective on what justice actually means in practice.
So, okay, he has this profound personal insight. How did that translate into his critique of the institutions themselves? Specifically, this idea of a two-tiered system.
It leads straight into probably his sharpest criticism. He uses that image of the young man, the jeans, the months in jail as like exhibit A for one side of the system.
A side that deals harshly with petty crime, especially when poverty is involved.
Precisely. Then he flips it. He looks at the other side, the politico-corporate elites, as he termed them.
The ones allegedly mixed up in corruption cases worth, billions of ringgit, huge sums.
Exactly. And the sting in the tail of his argument isn't just that these individuals often seem to escape serious consequences.
It's worse than that, isn't it? He pointed out they often get promoted, socially speaking.
That's the really galling part he highlighted. You have individuals maybe facing serious allegations, and yet they seem to climb the ladder of Malaysian honorific titles. They might go from being a Datuk Seri, which is already a significant title,
to a Tan Sri, or even a Tun, the highest level. These are titles conferred by the Malay rulers that carry real weight.
So the system, as he portrays it, doesn't just fail to hold them accountable in a legal sense. It sometimes appears to actively reward them with greater status and public legitimacy.
Which sends a terrible message, right? The contrast is just
Don't worry.
stark, swift, harsh justice for stealing jeans.
While for financial scandals involving billion scandals that impact the whole economy, everyone's lives, there's this perceived impunity, sometimes even advancement.
Yeah, he did acknowledge, as prime minister, he has to be careful with his words. Measured.
But he also said, look, he's human. And seeing that kind of double standard is something he finds deeply, fundamentally unacceptable.
You have to ask, what does that kind of perceived unfairness do to people's trust? Trust in the courts, trust in the government.
That's the core question, isn't it? And his answer seems to be that it erodes trust completely, which is why reform is so urgent for him.
It makes his personal story very powerful, but some might say, is personal experience enough? Does it risk overshadowing the need for objective policy?
That's a fair point to raise, but I think his argument isn't that his suffering replaces the need for good policy. It's that the suffering gives him the moral authority and the driving force to implement that policy. His credibility on this issue comes precisely because he's seen the system's failures up close. From the perspective of the vulnerable, he met these people, he saw their cases.
So it's not just abstract policy debates for him, it's grounded in real human stories he encountered.
Exactly. And that deep sense of injustice, it didn't just stop at the rich versus poor comparison. He also took aim at some within the judiciary itself.
Ah, right, the magistrates.
Yeah.
He had some specific thoughts there.
He did. He talked about observing magistrates who were, technically very well qualified, law degrees, proper training. They knew the letter of the law inside out.
Sorry.
But in his view, they only understood the technicalities. They didn't necessarily grasp the spirit of justice, the need for empathy.
So they could apply the sentencing guidelines perfectly, but maybe missed the human context, the why behind the offense.
That seems to be his point. Following the procedures might lead to the maximum possible sentence without fully considering if it's truly just in that specific situation. Now, he was very clear, this isn't about being soft on crime across the board. He specifically said serious, violent offenses like rape demand the maximum punishment. No question.
Okay, so it's nuanced. His concern was more about, what, cases of exploitation?
Yes, exactly. He brought up examples he witnessed involving foreign laborers.
Foreign workers, right. Often in vulnerable positions.
Very vulnerable. He described situations where they might have been tricked by agents, ended up violating immigration rules, perhaps not entirely through their own fault, but still ended up facing the harshest sentences possible under the law.
And his reflection on that.
It was about basic humanity. He stressed that everyone deserves humane treatment. Even if someone is an undocumented worker, even if they've entered the country without authorization, which he agrees shouldn't happen, they must still be treated with compassion. The punishment, he argued, should fit the circumstances, including any exploitation they suffered, not just the technical breach of regulations.
That seems like a core lesson he took away, this fundamental need for humane treatment, regardless of status.
Absolutely. It broadens the scope beyond just Malaysian citizens, anyone interacting with the justice system.
So when you pull it all together, his time in prison, the young man with the genes, the critique of the elite, the concerns about judicial empathy, the foreign workers, his mission now as prime minister feels deeply personal. It's like he's taking all the hardship, his own, his wife's, Datuk Seri Wan Azizah's, his children's, his friends, and channeling it.
Channeling it into a mandate, yes. He sees that immense test they all went through as the justification, the reason he needs to fix the system.
So that others don't have to face that same kind of, well, institutional cruelty or indifference that he saw and felt.
Precisely. He's using the power of his office to address the very flaws he identified when he was powerless, when he was inside the system looking out. It's quite a remarkable transformation of personal suffering into political action. And it really leaves you with a final thought, doesn't it? Does having a leader who has lived through the system's failures, who has seen the rot from the inside, does that provide a stronger, maybe more credible basis for driving real judicial and systemic reform compared to, say, someone proposing changes based only on theory or policy papers?
It's a powerful question. For Anwar, it seems clear that his lived experience is not just informing his policy, it is the driving force behind it. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like this.